Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langland, your host, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join us yet again. Each Wednesday, folks, new episodes upload on your favorite listening platform as well as on YouTube. And I want to thank you for spending some of your time and your day with myself and my special guests each week. And this week, folks, my special guest is Wendy Alexander, and she is coming to us from Australia on the other side of the world. So it is literally the butt crack of dawn for her right now. I don't even
Yes,
know.
it
I
is.
don't even know if the sun has risen there yet.
No.
So I thank you for waking up so darn early to join me here on Let Fear Bounce. But Wendy, she is an interview and career coach who believes midlife isn't the time to sit back and coast. It is the perfect opportunity to finally claim the career your soul aches for. I love that.
Okay.
As I am someone of a certain age, I can appreciate that
Me too.
sentiment right there. Yeah. Now she knows what it's like to be stuck. After a relationship breakdown left her as a broke single mom, buried in debt, she invested in herself and sought out mentors, found supportive communities, and transformed her mess into her success. She has also authored the book Internal Uprising, which was released in January of 2024. We got all kinds of stuff to dig into there, Wendy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
The pleasure. Wonderful to be here. It is early and the sun isn't shining, but we in fall at the moment. So, after
Oh,
autumn, yeah. So
yeah.
we have dark mornings.
Okay, and we are just heading into springtime here
Yes,
where
you
I'm at.
are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let's hop into this. So, you're an interview and career coach. Now, I understand how that came about. It said, you gave a little bit here in your bio, that you know what it's like to be stuck. But what made you want to go that route to become a career coach?
Look, I think it actually found me. I mean, when my situation happened, it was about 28 years ago. At that stage, I'd been in my relationship for almost 10 years. And then there was domestic violence, there was an affair, and I was pregnant. I was 4 months pregnant when that relationship ended. So it was desperation that drove me down a path to find, I will be honest and say, it was all about making more money for me. So that was the only motivation factor. I was pregnant. I knew I was going on maternity leave. I was panicked, filled with fear. And through the maternity leave, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to support this child. Um, and so as I was coming off maternity leave, I realized that the only thing I could do to get myself out of that situation was to make more income, because our house had sold at a loss. He walked away from all responsibility, including the responsibility of supporting my daughter. And so I was like, okay, I am mother, father, and provider here. So I'm going to have to make something work. So what I started to do was, I've always loved writing and words. So I started playing around with my resume, and sending it out, testing the market, but nothing was happening. And then I decided, well, who can I talk to that could help me? And obviously the hiring people. So recruiters and hiring managers, they were the ones that made the decisions when it came to giving someone an opportunity. And so the little money I had at the end of every month, I would save it for a period of time, and then I would just start inviting recruiters out for coffee, because I couldn't afford to take them out for lunch. It was like, you're getting a coffee, you're getting a
Right.
coffee from me, and that's it. I will say people were extremely kind and gave me their time, had the coffees with me. I started picking their brains, asking them for tips on how could I, and in my head, I needed to make $20,000 more a year. That's a lot of money to make, to go from one position to another. But I was like, I'm just going to ask. Let's just see. So I did, spent a lot of time with recruiters, rejigged my resume, rewrote it many times, kept testing the market. And then eventually I landed a job interview, and it was a job that was paying quite a bit more than I was earning. I had the interview. I didn't get the job, was bitterly disappointed, because I was like, my God, disappointed, but also desperate. I was like,
Yeah.
my God, I have to make more money. Um, But I went back to this particular interviewer and I said, listen, I know I didn't get the job, but do you have any feedback for me? And she was great. She gave me feedback. She said, look, your answers were too long. You stumbled here and there. You did this, you did that. I didn't get it clear. She gave me feedback on how I could be better in interviews. So I started practicing that. And then probably a month after that, I landed another opportunity. And this time I got the job. And the job jumped my income by $50,000. So for me, that was a shock because I wasn't expecting that. I was grateful. But it also put me on a path where the people around me who knew that I had hit rock bottom, lost everything, lost my house, starting out with huge debt and a baby, they came to me for help because they're like, how did you do that? And that was how the side business, it actually found me. I started to help my colleagues. I started to help friends, family. They started to get success. And the more I helped them, the more I refined my process. So I got better at how I could help people get jobs quicker and more money and negotiate for, the kinds of perks they wanted, the kinds of environment they wanted to work in and so on. And literally the system was born out of that. So it was born out of my own desperation, my own wanting to do something for myself, but then people around me seeing the success coming and saying, how did you do that? And so I entered the corporate world with this big increase and a side business. I did this very much like 5 hours a week. I would work with people and help them until I hit midlife and menopause. And that slammed me against the rock. And I'd been in corporate at that stage in these executive positions, this high-paying, high-powered positions for over 20 years. And then made the decision, I was going through a lot of body change, a lot of stress. And I was like, you know what? I'm out of corporate now. My daughter was grown. And I transitioned into full-time career coaching. So that's how the whole journey began.
That is, what an awesome story, and I know a lot of people listening can relate to you, maybe not on the full thing, but on many of the aspects that you talked about. One thing I picked up on, I love how you, regardless of your fears, because you mentioned that a couple times, there was a lot of, and I know what it's like to be a single mom raising a daughter. And there is fear involved. And you're wondering, like you said, you were motivated by money. There are times you have to be.
Yes.
Because you need to care for your children or child. You need to keep a roof over your head. You need to eat. You need to be able to eat. So I understand that and completely resonated with what you were talking about. But I latched on to what you said. You said you were researching and looking into different recruiters, and you invited them for a coffee to pick their brain. I don't think I've ever met someone who has taken that initiative. They'll send out tons of resumes and never hear anything, but you took the initiative and said to yourself, you know what, I'm going to reach out to them and ask and invite them to coffee and pick their brain. That is a brilliant idea. And I love that because I've not heard of that. And honestly, I've never thought of doing that when I was looking for a job, because I too was in the corporate world for a couple decades. And I hit a certain stage and went, nah, I don't want to do it anymore.
Same.
And so you invited them, you learned a tremendous amount from them, and you said so many of them were very kind. And you started just tweaking your resume, and you just, two things. You faced your fear and you believed in yourself.
Yes.
How awesome. And those actually are two hard things to do. To face your fears, that's not easy for everyone. To, believe in yourself and have the gumption to go out there and say, well, I'm not waiting for them to come to me. I'm going to go to them. That's, that's amazing. And it's not everybody has that courage and that belief in themselves. So, kudos to you for doing that. And now teaching others and helping others to see their own light and have them, teaching them how to do that and interview better. Then that feedback that you mentioned that you received from the one, I was always one that if I did not get a job, I always followed up and
Yep.
said, could you
Yep.
please give me feedback on what it was that I was lacking in my presentation or whatever? And sometimes it was I didn't have enough experience, or sometimes I had too much experience. And they were always very honest, and I was always very grateful for that.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it does. It does help. With regards to the fear piece, when I'd come out of that relationship, one of the things I did do was put myself through counseling and psychological support because I was quite broken at the end of that relationship. And you know, there were two huge fears. One was, how do I support this child? I
Yeah.
want to give my daughter a good life. And I had this debt to pay off because, as I said, he had walked away from all responsibility. So it was all on my shoulders. And then, yes, there was fear around approaching the recruiters and the hiring people. But I ended up weighing up the two fears against each other. And I was like, which one is going to potentially move me forward?
Right.
And which one is going to keep me stuck here, struggling, unable to support my daughter, and all, you go through all these things. Am I going to end up homeless? What's going to happen? Now, I
Yeah.
probably never would have ended up homeless because my parents live in Australia as well. And when I delivered the baby, I was living with my parents. They came once the relationship ended, once the house was lost, they came and got me, took me home, nurtured me. And I actually stayed with them until my daughter was about 4 months old. And then I went out on my own again. So I had some support, but it was about, in the end, it came down to weighing up the two fears and saying, like, which one is potentially going to, and I started to ask myself one question, which was, what is the worst that can happen? The recruiter could say no to me.
Right.
You know what? I'll just move on to the next one. In the end,
Right.
it was just, I'll just go to the next one. And I had a list of all the top recruiters in the field that I was in. I was like, and I'm going to go through each one of them one by one. The thing is, probably the first one I approached didn't say yes, but the second one did. And after that, there's a level of confidence that happens too
Yeah.
when you get a yes and you get to ask the questions. And I always reached out on the basis of, I'm trying to improve myself.
And I think
Most
that
people,
that's the best way because, well, you're
yeah,
being honest. You're just
yep.
being very transparent and honest.
Yep. And most people, I find human nature, I know that people can focus on the dark and the gloomy in the world, but
Right.
fundamentally, when you're authentic with people, they want to help. I
Yes.
think it's in human nature. People will step forward. And I just approached them and said, you know what? I'm trying to improve how I interview. I'm trying to improve how I write my resume, things like that. And people were like, oh, yeah. And they gave me, their top 5 tips or their top 3 tips. And I applied it. This is the other thing. When you get the advice or when you get the person that helps you, apply what they teach you. Because a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
They let the fears stop them from actually
Yeah.
taking the action.
Right.
So action is required. It might be
Oh,
small action,
absolutely. There's
it's
no, you cannot sit back on your laurels on that when you have you to pay and mouths to feed, you know.
that's right.
And I often say, well, Kim, time to pull up your big girl panties.
That's
You
right.
know, just got to keep on keeping on. And there's been, and I know a lot of listeners out there, maybe they're sitting in the spot right now where you said that you came from a relationship that there was domestic violence and abuse, and
Yep.
you were broken. You used that word broken.
Oh
And there
yeah.
are so many people that have been in that spot, not the same specific one, but we've all
Mm-hmm.
been broken in different ways. I've been there too for various different reasons, more than once in my life.
Yes.
And you do, and as you were speaking, it made me think of, and I don't know in Australia if you guys ever had Mr. Rogers. It's a
Yes.
show,
Yes. 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 Yes.
you know, won't you be my neighbor?
Yeah.
His one of his lines was, in times of trouble, always look for the helpers.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I've
Absolutely.
always loved that. I've always loved that because I like to consider myself a helper, but
Yep.
I also know that I've been in spots where I had to look for the helpers. And
Helpers.
it
Yep.
sounds like the same for you.
Yep. And you know, when it comes even to negotiation or asking, here's another thing that happens in the career space that I see, I still see it today. People don't ask for what they want. They
You're
sit in
right.
a job or they sit somewhere and they go, I really want to get that promotion, or, you know, I want to move into this different industry. But they never reach out and ask. They just assume that someone's going to say no to them. And I've found in my career, this is one of the things that helped me throughout my career. I always asked. So when I was going back, when I was coming off maternity leave, once I'd landed this great job, I asked them, I said to them, I'm a single parent. My daughter is an infant. She's not even 6 months, or she was just about turning 6 months when I went back to work. And I said, I would like to work some of my days from home. This is 28 years ago when that was not a thing,
Right.
right? And I said, here's what, but I also, you know, when you're asking for something, make sure you're giving something. So I would say, let's trial it for 3 months and see if it works for you and if it works for me. But I was determined to make sure it worked for them, because I knew if it worked for them, they would say yes to me continuing to work from home. And so what I did was put my all into that 3 months, delivered above and beyond, you know, made sure they could see that it didn't matter where I worked. If I worked in the office, if I worked at home, I was always going to deliver my projects on time and so on. And that built a reputation. And so in the end, my whole career was done parallel to raising my daughter. Without, you know, I would go into the office once or twice a week, have all my meetings on a particular day or particular time, and then work the rest of the time from home. Because I wasn't ready to put my daughter in full-time daycare at age 6 months. I wanted to be there, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes, but the thing is, the secret is to ask. You know, people don't ask for what they want.
You're
Sometimes they
right.
want an opportunity at a promotion, but they don't ask. They just go, oh, well, the boss is just going to say no to me. You know, they're never going to give me a shot. Well, if you don't ask, you're never
Yeah,
going to
you'll
know.
never know. Right. And like you said, you've got to ask in the right way, because you have
Yes,
to show to them, you know, you're asking a question, maybe it's for promotion, or like you said, work from home. You have to pitch them. You have to give them a pitch of why, how it's going to benefit them as a company.
yes. Well, how it's going to benefit them. And also always have your evidence that you're the right person
Right.
to ask for that. So I say to people, gather your achievements as you deliver through your projects or whatever you're working on. Keep a memo of that, so that when you go and ask for a promotion or when you go and ask for a pay rise, you have the evidence of how you've delivered above and beyond, how you've always been consistent, how you've contributed to the team if you help build the team, how you've contributed to saving revenue if that's what you did, if some of your actions in your people don't gather their achievements. And so then when they turn up to ask for something, they've got nothing to put on the table, right?
Right.
Always have something to put on the table. And it's a real, that's what I started doing. And this was a tip that a coach, an interview coach gave me, recruiter. She said, gather your achievements throughout your career. Even if you never need to use them as evidence, even if it's in a Word document. She said, every job that you work, if there's 3 to 6 top achievements that you've achieved in that particular company or on that particular project, have it ready. Know it, have it ready. And so when someone asks you, or when you go and ask for a promotion or an opportunity, you can actually just rattle that off without any kind of lack of, because a lot of people stumble, you know, they're not confident in their abilities, or they're not confident in what they've achieved. But she was like, have it ready, study it, know it, so that you can give the examples really easy. It works for your resume, it works for your LinkedIn profile, it works for your interviews, right? And it
Right.
works for your negotiation. Gathering your achievements works for everything, because fundamentally, people want to know how you've contributed, how you've achieved. They don't care about the list of tasks and responsibilities. That's
Right.
old and redundant on resumes now. Now it's about what did you achieve? Because the moment you can demonstrate that, a hiring person will go, oh, now I can see how this person can help my company or help my
Right.
project,
And
right?
I
So it's
found,
really important.
yeah, oh, I agree. And what a wonderful tip. Well, several tips that you're sharing there. So, hey, folks out there listening, I hope you're writing these down. If not, then go back and re-listen to it. But no, those are great tips, especially for young folks that are just looking and getting into the working
Yes.
world or corporate world, whatever direction they may be going. But any of that helps to build confidence in oneself,
Yes.
you know. And when, like you said, a recruiter or a boss or whatever, they're going to notice that confidence, because who would you look at first if you were hiring someone?
Exactly.
You'd want to look at someone who knew their stuff, who had a little
Yeah.
bit of experience at least, and who had confidence.
Yeah.
I got a job one time. I applied for a job. I had never done anything that they were asking for, and I
Mm.
applied for it anyway. And they
Good.
called me, and I was very surprised. But in the interview, it was the president and the vice president of the company. And immediately I was like, okay, well, Kim, don't get nervous. You know,
Yeah.
so I went in there, and they said, but before the interview, knowing that I had never done, it was for a sales position, but I had no idea. I didn't understand what their product was. I didn't understand how it worked. I knew nothing about it. And I had never done this type of job. But prior to the interview, I got on their website and studied their website. And then I started Googling what their pieces and parts that they made, what they did. Now, I
Yep.
still didn't understand it, but one of the first questions that they asked me was, have you taken a look at our website? And I said, yes, I have. And then I explained what I had done, what I had Googled, and that I still didn't understand it, but I found it incredibly fascinating.
Mm.
That was like a huge check mark for them. And then the president asked, he said, he goes, do you wonder why we asked you in here knowing that you have no experience in this type of manufacturing? I said, well, I'll be honest. Yes, I am wondering. And he said, it was the volunteer experience that you listed on your resume.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. That.
I had just updated my resume with all of my volunteer stuff because I do a lot of volunteering. And he said that's what caught his eye, that I was a veteran and that I spent a lot of my time volunteering.
Yeah.
So they both saw something completely different, the vice president and the president, and they both agreed, get her in here, even though she doesn't know anything. And I got the job.
Yep. Well, volunteering is a great thing to put on the resume. It's because people know when you're volunteering, you're working in so many various capacities. So you're
Right.
developing a whole broad range of skills. Um, and it is one way to get experience. Like one of the things I help a lot of the people that come to me with, I have no experience in that. I go, well, where can we go volunteer? Where can you go volunteer at this company for like 3 months, 6 months, or even in the community? You know, one of the other things I will say that's happened, I volunteered at a homeless shelter once. There was, what I found was there was a lot of key decision makers, CEOs, and people like that volunteering in the same shelter. Because when
Mhm.
people reach a certain level of success, they want to give back. So they often go to volunteer work. That is a great place to meet people. I actually had one of the CEOs of a company working alongside me for a few weeks, and he offered me a job. He said to me, I'm watching you communicate with this team of volunteers, and I just like the way you communicate with people. Are you interested in a job? I didn't need a job at the time, but yet what I'm saying is you don't know where you're going to meet your opportunity,
That is right. And volunteering
right?
is not only good for you, it's good for the organization that you're giving your time to, but
To,
you are learning something. I mean,
yes,
valuable skills. You know,
yes,
so maybe you're not great at communication, but when you're volunteering, you're working with a wide range of people from a
people,
diverse background. You
yes,
know, no matter what the organization is that you're volunteering with, mine just happened to be with veterans. And that's still, like you said, you're
yeah,
volunteering right beside the president or a CEO of a big corporation that you'd
yeah,
never met, but they're going to remember you.
yeah. So opportunities, and I've had clients who have gone and done the very same thing and have landed an opportunity volunteering, and then a CEO is there or a key decision maker of a big project is there, and they've come back to me and they goes, oh my God, that worked. I said, if you have the time, find places to volunteer because your opportunities can come from anywhere. This
And
is
you
all
you
about thinking
benefit from
outside the
them too,
box.
personally,
Yes, absolutely.
on
Watching
like
them
on
lead.
mental health level. You
Yes,
know,
absolutely.
helping others is always, it's an endorphin boost for your own self,
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
and as Mr. Rogers always, look for the helpers, become a helper.
Become a helper and look for the helpers. I love that.
Yeah.
Look for
Yeah.
the helpers and become a helper, because
Right.
I mean, that's how my business started, as I said. People came, they saw the success. I wasn't charging people anything. I was just helping them. But
Right.
what happened was my reputation started getting out there. And those people that I helped, my colleagues, my family, my friends, started to send their friends my way. That's how business was born, right? It's like you just start at, because I'm like, you know what? I know what that feels like. I know
Yeah.
what it feels like to be fretting over money, having an infant child and going, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to get ready to put this child through school when it gets to that schooling,
Right.
because I've got this massive debt.
Yeah.
So help others. It comes round. It always comes round.
Yes. It will always come back
That's
around.
that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
And
Give out good and you'll receive good.
absolutely, yeah.
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 So this is a great segue into internal uprising.
Yes.
Yeah,
This is it.
we've built ourselves up. Oh, hold that up again for a couple more seconds so we can see the cover.
Yeah, it was
Beautiful.
designed. Yeah.
Internal Uprising. So you said that was released in January of 2024, so just a little over a
Yeah.
year ago. How did that come about? Share a little bit about that
So
journey.
so this is all about my huge struggle through menopause.
Oh,
So as
okay.
I said, when that came across my path, I was unprepared, I suppose. I was 45 years old when my first hot flash hit.
I think
And it
most women
was,
are unprepared, honestly.
yeah, it was such a tumultuous time. I was at the height of my career. So, in the top of my game, earning really good money in a high position in corporate. And of all the things that upended my life, and I've been through a lot. I've grown up in apartheid South Africa. I came to Australia, migrated with the family. Lots of things happened, went through domestic violence. I've been through a lot. Menopause was the thing that kicked my butt
I believe it.
because, for a woman, especially when you've worked hard and you've been a diligent, confident woman, and all of these things have happened, along comes this thing, and my whole body changed, and it changed so fast. So the insomnia was one of the first things that hit. Then it was the hot flashes, the mood swings, the sweats, all of these things. And the brain fog was the thing that really took me down, because I've always been a very organized person. My reputation in corporate was high. People knew I was reliable. I was a good manager, all these things. Suddenly the brain is not working the way it always did. I had to write down everything my to-do list was long, and I had to tick things off because I would forget. So it dented my confidence. It absolutely dented my confidence. That was probably the thing that did it for me. And then, but as I said, writing was always a part of my life. I'd written my way through my time in South Africa, through the broken up relationship. And then I was probably a year and a half into menopause when I remembered. I was like, you always write your way through things. I started to journal and journaled, and it turned into this book in the end. So it's quite a raw and authentic journey about menopause. But then, so that's probably the first half of the book. And the second half of the book is about the strategy. So there again, I didn't sit on my laurels waiting for life to get better. There were certain things I started to do, looking at my eating habits, going to see a Chinese medicine doctor to help me with some of the physical symptoms. And then through that, writing my way, determining, like I have a process. I actually do it with a lot of my clients now, but I did it for myself at the time, and I call it mining your story. And what I did was I dug into the patterns of my story, my life, what I really love doing, what I no longer enjoy doing. And through that, I determined that it was time for me to get out of corporate. The stress in corporate was too much. Yes, I was making good money, but I was no longer inspired, wasn't happy there anymore. And so I had a look, and I'm like, what I really love doing, and even through the difficult moments of menopause, I loved writing people's resumes. I loved writing their LinkedIn profiles. I was always loved writing people's stories. So I'm like, I'm going to go do this full time. I already had it as a side business. As I said, it started that 28 years ago. And I just made the decision, but I didn't just jump out of corporate. I planned my exit. And here's one thing I will say to people: realistically, always look at the finances and make sure you can back yourself financially, because what you don't want to do is put yourself under financial stress. You don't
Right.
want to exit a job and then you don't have money to pay the bills, or you don't know how you're going to. So I did do a savings plan over the time that I was planning to leave corporate, planned it out, and then left when I was ready. And it's the best thing I've done for myself. I've been doing this full time for 7 years now, and I love my work.
That is awesome. I've been doing this for 5 years now.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
and I've spoken to many women around our same age.
Yep.
That it's interesting that it's always around the same age that this little switch happens, and you're like, and I think it's because, for me anyway, I'm single, so, and my daughter's married and off on her own, has her own home, a really good job, starting her own family. So it's an empty nest, and I remember thinking to myself, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm still mom, but now I can actually be Kim
Yes.
full time again. And
Yes.
that after decades of not, because
Yep.
you wear the hats of everything, like you
That's
said
right.
earlier, mother,
Yep.
father, everything. And
Yes.
that's a lot. And I remember asking myself, gosh, who am I? What am I going to do? What do I
That's
like
right.
doing?
I have a tagline with when you start hating Mondays, it is time to move, time to reassess, time to find out what it is that's going to make you want to jump out of bed on a Monday morning,
Right. When you
right?
start hating Mondays.
Hating Mondays. Yeah.
And I started
Yep.
hating Mondays.
Yeah. Yeah.
I clearly remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
But
And
so,
so,
how fortunate that we are, the two of us at least. And I know there's other
yeah,
people out there that did the same thing around the same time, because the
time.
world did change. It completely changed,
Yes, it
um,
did.
for many, many, many people, and in good ways for a lot of people that I've met, and of course in
Yeah.
horrible, catastrophic ways for others. And I don't ever put that lightly. Um,
Yes.
but I've met so many people that they made big life changes regarding what they're doing, their job or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like a complete flip-flop from what they used to do. And they're so much happier now.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is what I see all the time. And so
Yeah.
I mostly work with people who want to transition into either new industries or they want to start a business. I help them get there, because you need to form alliances and business partnerships if you decide you want to go into business. You also need to be positioning yourself well to be able to attract clients, if you go into your own business and things like that. So where I work is in that writing space. Because I love words. I've always and that's what I realized. I was like, man, even in corporate, my bosses were giving me the communication. They figured out really quickly that I loved words, that I could use words well. So they would let me write all the project communiques. They would let me write all the power packs and all these things. One of my bosses was Dutch. He didn't have a great command of the language. And he used to let me write all his emails. When he had a big message to send out, he'd go,
Yeah.
Wendy, can you come and do this? So I found that pattern and I was like, this has woven its way through my whole life. This is what I love doing. And so I just made the decision and went to do it full time. Which is
You
why
make
I
it
do
happen.
love I do love Mondays now.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mind them either. I don't. It's Sunday night. I'm just like, all right, what are we gonna accomplish, and who am I gonna meet this week?
Week.
You
Yes, that's
know,
what I say to myself too.
yeah, because you
How
never
is this week
know.
going to go? And I look forward to it. I look forward to it. Whereas the first part of my career was great. It was exciting. I was also helping a lot of people, growing teams and things like that. That was great. But when you've done it and it becomes repetitive, and then it was, as you move on in the career and you climb the corporate ladder, it becomes about revenue and money. And
Yeah.
somehow the people development often gets lost in that piece. That was not satisfying for me. I did not want to be answering about bottom line and money and budget all the time. It's like people matter too. And
That
so,
is such a big point that you're such a big point that you're making, because that's how it was. And I clearly remember saying to one of my bosses one day, we were having a discussion, and I said, but we have to see past the dollar signs sometime, because you're not going to have any dollar signs unless you pay attention to the people.
correct. They actually make the company. Your
Right. They're the
people is
ones who
what
are
makes.
providing the dollar signs,
Yep, yep,
And
absolutely.
everybody looks at success differently, and some do, and always will. And I'm not putting it down. The more dollars or the more zeros they have, that's their level of success. For me, and hey, who wouldn't want that? If it comes the
Yeah,
way, if it comes to you, awesome, you know.
awesome.
Um, but my first priority for me is is it helping in some way
Yeah,
someone? Am I learning something from it? Because nuggets of hope. I'm always like, I just want to toss
yeah,
nuggets out there. I want to make my small slice of the world better.
yeah, same.
And I'm going to do this. And so will my books do that? I hope my books do that. Will my podcast do that? And
Yeah,
I have clients because I have to pay my bills. So I do have
yes,
clients that I do freelance work for. But even that, I truly enjoy doing. None of it's a chore.
yes. Yeah, same. None of my work is a chore for me anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I
I'm not
do.
worried. I'm not worried about, oh, I have to add two more zeros onto this.
No, no.
I'm fine where I'm at right now,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it, and I don't want to lose that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
I'm at the
enjoyment of
same
it.
space. I mean, I have a partner after I met a great person. I've been with him for 15 years now. So I mean a great partnership. But at the moment, I said to him, all that I love doing now, apart from my work, is traveling. So I actually work to travel. And I am on some plane to somewhere at least once or twice a year. So I'm off to Europe in a few weeks' time. I'll be gone for 6 weeks, traveling with my daughter. He's not coming because we're doing some renovations on the house, and he's going to do that while I'm away. But this is the thing, you start to figure out what is the thing that really brings you joy. For me, like you, if the extra zeros come into the bank account, fantastic. You know, I don't know if I'm going to ever be super wealthy. May happen, may not happen, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me. I have enough, and I have enough to travel. And that is all I care about, helping my
And that's
clients
awesome.
get results
Yeah, that is
and
awesome.
seeing the world.
Right.
That's it.
Yes.
At this
That
stage
is
of
one of
life,
my goals. I want to
yeah,
be able to go somewhere that I've never been at least once a year. And that just
yes,
might be in my country. I mean, I'm in the United States. Each
yes,
state is so different, and there's so many I haven't been to before. It's an absolutely beautiful country. Um,
yes.
and I'm thinking, well, I haven't seen even half of this country yet. So some of it I could
Oh
even
yeah,
drive to.
America's it's huge. I lived in the US. I lived in Los Angeles 20 years ago, and I
Oh,
was
okay.
lived in New York as well for 9 months or something.
Oh, oh, so you're a
And I
city
don't feel like, yeah, well, I love to be near the water. So for me, if when I was in New York, I was right at the Hudson River, right? So if
Oh,
I could walk along the water,
yep.
for me, it's like I do need that bit of nature around me, even though I am a city girl. It's all about same like you. For me, it's like I just want to go meet different people from different cultures. So I also try to go to places I haven't been before,
And the
you know?
stuff that you learn, I'm always open to, I love learning new things,
Yeah,
or learning about different cultures or what have you. To me,
yeah,
that's like, if at the end of the day you're like, wow, that was so interesting, or that person I met, I never would have thought to look at the world quite that way. There's
yeah.
always something to learn or to
That's
add.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This
Yeah.
has been an awesome conversation. I mean, I could talk for so much longer. This has been so fun, Wendy. Now, where can folks find your book and all of the good stuff that you're doing?
Okay, so the book is on Amazon, Internal Uprising, and if you Google that with my name, Wendy Alexander, it'll pop up. I also have there's a bundle I've put together, especially for women. So there's a digital copy available on my website, which is happycareerhub.com. That's the name of my website, and that's probably the best place to find me. I have a bunch of free resources there. I have a midlife women's bundle around career and around getting through menopause, which includes that on that website. So yeah, people can find me there.
Awesome. Awesome. Wonderful. So, folks, all of that will be in the description and in the show notes, depending upon if you're listening or watching on YouTube. So they'll all be available for you to check out. Now, Wendy, I always ask all of my guests before we close out the show to please toss out a nugget of hope. So, what would your nugget of hope be for the listeners today?
So my nugget of hope is if you take even the smallest, tiniest action, you inevitably going to come at success. Success can't happen without action. And sometimes the action can be you just pick up the phone and talk to someone. Sometimes the action can be if you're trying to change your career, you go and look at that resume that you haven't looked at for 20 years. So success is a result of tiny little actions, and you only take one at a time so that you don't overwhelm yourself. That is what's worked for me, and it has always worked for me. I never take on huge, big action steps. It's the little ones, all the tiny ones I took that made the difference. So take action.
What a great nugget. That is a great nugget. Yeah, don't discount the steps, folks, even if they're small.
Mm-hmm. Do the small steps, because you know what? The small steps compound and they lead to momentum. And then the momentum leads to the big success.
Right. Those small steps can lead to great success.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's a t-shirt right there.
That's it.
I think I say that almost every week with my guests. I'm like, that's a coffee mug. That's a t-shirt.
T-shirt.
Well, people have so many great things to say. So yeah, I love that nugget. I love that nugget. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you once again for being my guest. This has been a true pleasure. Thank you so much.
It has been wonderful, wonderful chat. I love it.
And I would love to have you back on again, maybe sometime later in the year, early next year. See what's going on in the world and where you've been in the world.
Yeah. Off to UK and Europe. So let's see what that brings. What adventures
That's right.
that
You
brings.
never know. You never know. Well, everybody out there listening, thank you once again for tuning in this week to another episode of Let Fear Bounce with my special guest this week, Wendy Alexander, coming to us from Australia, the other side of the world. So again, thank you. Tune in, make sure you like, subscribe, and do all the things, folks, so we can keep these nuggets of hope out there and, being out there and spread across the world. I am Kim Langley, your host of Let Fear Bounce. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed.
Kindness. It's simple, powerful, and free. Yet, it holds the extraordinary ability to change someone's day or even their life. Order your copy of Nuggets of Hope, Cultivate Kindness on Amazon.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. New episodes drop each week, folks, on YouTube and Spotify and most listening platforms. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all the things. So until next time, folks, take a deep breath, be kind to yourself, and as always, let fear bounce.